Hi, everybody. Sandy Boucher here, and it's another Sunday, so it's time for Sundays with Sandy. I hope you're going to check out this video, and I hope the information that I share with you today will get you thinking as we're in the midst of what I'm starting to call the reconciliation era. If you've been watching the news, you've seen the divide with the Stanley verdict and then the Cormier verdict as two Indigenous youth lost their lives and no one was convicted for that. So reconciliation is this topic that honestly is starting to have a really bitter taste in the mouth of a lot of Indigenous people. And it got me thinking of what does this, as my mom would call a $15 word, what does this word even mean? And is it possible? So I went and consulted good old Google. And let's look at this. So reconciliation by definition, first definition, the restoration of friendly relations. That has a huge assumption attached, assuming that the settlers and Indigenous people were ever friendly. And I don't know about you, but when I think of friendly, I think of authentic. There's a good chance that the settlers and Indigenous people got along, but I believe that the settlers always thought that their ways were superior. If they were getting along with the Indigenous, it's because they had to learn about this country or how to survive here or how to survive one of our winters, but it was never an even situation where it was friendly and they both had mutual respect for each other. So we're not restoring anything. If anything, I think we need to build a relationship, an honest, authentic relationship. So that first definition of reconciliation, out the window. The second, the action of making one view or belief compatible with another. We're going to set that one aside for a second because I want to look at the word compatible. The last one is to do with accounting. It's the action of making financial accounts consistent, reconciling your bank statement with your book. So that doesn't really apply here. So we only have that one definition of making one view or belief compatible to another. So I thought, wow, are Indigenous views and beliefs ever going to be compatible with the non-Indigenous European influence mainstream that we see here in Canada? So as I said, I went into Google further, and this time I looked up the word compatible. So the first definition of two things able to exist or occur together without conflict. Well, I don't know about you, but if there's one thing I've learned on this journey is that no relationship is conflict free. If you're anywhere near another person for any length of time, at some point there's going to be a conflict. Now, what that conflict looks like, there's a wide spectrum there, but there's going to be conflict. So we would have to rework that to exist or occurring together with respectable and reasonable conflict, with non-violence, or at minimum, not killing us. So that's possible. The second one is of two people able to have a harmonious relationship, well-suited, well-matched, or like-minded. I'm sorry, we're never going to be like-minded. If there's one thing I've come to learn in my 53 years, it's how different our value systems are, how different our view on the world is, and that's okay. I don't need non-Indigenous people to adopt my viewpoint. I need them to respect it. Although, on the other hand, when it comes to the Indigenous view about the environment, we'd be in a lot better shape if everyone adopted that mindset, but I digress. And the last one was of one thing consistent with another. So consistency, that got me thinking, you know, I can get along, and I have had relationships and worked with people that I didn't agree with in the past because they were consistent. Their values, beliefs, actions, opinions were the same on Monday morning as they were Friday afternoon, as they were Sunday morning. And that made it possible for me to understand what was going to happen next, predict the future, if you will, and build a relationship with them. Consistency and authenticity is something I think we can work with. But I don't see conflict free. And as far as compatible, I think I'm going back to the two-row wampum here. I'm going back to the learning curve logo. Two canoes traveling through the learning curve together. You don't step on us, we don't step on you. You get to run your communities the way you run them. We run our communities the way we run them. Keeping in mind that the Indigenous communities you see today are not the way Indigenous people were before the settlers got here. That's not the natural way we are. That's what happens to a group of people that have been oppressed for over 100 years, generation after generation after generation. The violence, the abuses of all sorts, even the suicides, it's all attributed. If you start researching oppression or long-term oppression, or better, internalized oppression, you're going to see exactly what I mean. But I do believe we can travel together. And that's the basis of everything I do. So I was thinking about it this morning. And if you don't know, come June of this year, I'm launching my new book. It's called The Path Through the Learning Curve of the Reconciliation Era. And I'm going to be hosting a public event here in Thunder Bay, which to many people is the eye of the storm. So if you're at all interested in learning what I'm talking about, it's going to be presented at that event. Make sure to be there. But as I was thinking about the path and what we need to do, I remembered, and we see it all the time, there's so many motivational speakers out there that say it now, it's not what do you want to be when you grow up. It's what are you willing to work hard enough to be. I see so many people that want reconciliation but are not willing to put any effort or work in to get there. And that's just not going to happen. It's going to take work. And you know what? It's going to take three key things. First and foremost, on both sides of this curve, we have to heal. If you're carrying around a lot of anger and resentment to Indigenous people, you need to deal with that. And as an Indigenous person, if you're carrying around a lot of hurt and pain and you're still very much feeling victimized, well, you need to get help with that. Because as anyone who can tell you, anyone who's been through incredible pain and made it out the other side, they will tell you that that healing is up to you. It's not based on the actions of someone else. We are not going to stop being victims because someone else starts playing nice. And I would never want to put my healing, make it dependent on someone else anyways. Healing comes from inside, and with the right help and support, you can do it. Because that anger or that pain just makes it impossible to have a conversation. We're nowhere near reconciliation until we first take care of our healing. The second one is the one you've heard a lot of: unpack that suitcase. We're adults now. We got to look at this stuff that we were taught, whether it was by our loving parents or whether it was by our next door neighbors, and ask ourselves, is this really true? If someone's told you that all Indigenous people are drunks living on welfare, you need to realize that that's not based in fact. You need to start using your brain, shut off autopilot, and start destroying these stereotypes in your life, because they're not serving anyone. They're not serving you. They're preventing you from building bridges with people that could be your best relationships. And from the Indigenous side as well, there's a lot of people that don't trust any non-Indigenous people, and that's not helpful either. We need to judge people as individuals. If you're a jerk, go ahead, and I don't have to like a jerk, but not liking his entire race just doesn't make sense at all. And then when we've unpacked and destroyed those stereotypes, we need to learn. We need to get closer. We need to find out the truth. If you're wondering why Indigenous people do something, ask respectfully. an Indigenous person. But I'll tell you right now, if you're going to ask a question because you want to understand, then please ask that question. But if you've already formed a judgment and you're just asking a question because you think it's going to prove your point, be silent. Because you got to go back to step one and deal with that healing part. Because if you're still sitting in judgment, if you're still doing the white supremacy bill, this isn't going to happen. I believe we can bring this together. I believe there is no choice. I don't want to leave my grandchildren to deal with this mess any more than I want to leave them dealing with an environmental mess. We got to work on this one step at a time. We're going to trip over each other and we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay, because you know what? I just came from church, and no, I'm not a Christian, but I go to church almost every Sunday, as often as I can, because it helps me to understand people that have Christian values. That's part of the effort I'm doing to move towards reconciliation. And the church I go to, and they know my stance and they welcome me, has this beautiful sign in the lobby, and I had to write it down just to make sure I got it right. And it says, everybody welcome, nobody's perfect, anything's possible. And if that doesn't sum up the mission for reconciliation, I don't know what does. Everybody's welcome. Right? And I have to remember that when someone is spitting out something racist, I have to remember everyone's welcome on this planet. It's not his fault or her fault that was the teachings they were given. Nobody's perfect. Not me, far from it. And I have to give them the space not to be perfect either. And anything's possible if we actually learn to walk softly with each other, to ask respectful questions, to understand and not judge. So there you have it. Everybody's welcome. Nobody's perfect. Anything's possible. That's the responsibility of reconciliation. And I hope you're going to join me. Until next Sunday, have a super duper double delicious week. I'm off to do a seminar, so I know I'm going to have an amazing week, and I hope you do too. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. I love you.